Welcome to OkState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. We are joined by Coach Rainwater, Robbie Rainwater. Wow, what a weekend. Last night I was there, man. It was blustery. Never apologize for winning cold weather early season games. I don't care who you're playing. And then last week you forget Oklahoma State win and won a really tough game against a good, scrappy Abilene Christian team. Man, it's been a great week, Coach.
Yeah, and last time we talked, last Friday, I believe it was, and we talked about how important it was going to be for OSU to try and get at least one win out of the group that they were playing with Tennessee, Mississippi State, and A&M, and to come away with 2 wins is great. But, early on in the season, those are great wins, and it helps with RPI and that sort of thing. But I think you can make the argument that winning a 3-2 midweek game or a 6-0 against Abilene Christian is just as important because, it's just as important for a team to be able to go out and beat quality teams, just like it is to learn how to win tight ball games when you're coming off an emotionally and physically draining weekend, in football and those other sports they talk about trap games, you come off an emotional. We've talked about that even during football season that, you go 2 years ago, you win Bedlam and then you go get just absolutely obliterated at Central Florida. Those are those trap games.
You had to remind me of that game. Holy smokes.
and so I was very happy with last night, knowing that, and anybody that's been around the sport long enough will know that is a very tough game. It doesn't matter who you're playing. When you're coming off playing 2, depending on what ranking you're looking at, you're playing the number 1 team in the nation on Friday, and you turn around and play the number 1 team in the nation again on Saturday between Tennessee and Texas A&M, and that makes it for a difficult midweek game, a Tuesday game. And so to me, it's just as important that those guys and that team learn how to win a 3-2 ball game in a midweek, coming off an emotionally draining and physically draining weekend, and it was good to see that they stuck it out. And I think we're going to talk about this a lot throughout the season because you've heard Coach Holliday mention it more than one time, is about the competitive endurance.
Yes.
And I don't know that I've ever heard that phrase before, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think last night was a talking point, or an example of that talking point of keeping that competitive advantage, regardless if you're playing the number 1 ranked team in the state or if it's a midweek game against Winthrop. Because I've heard you say it before, they've got Division I players too. What I mean? They're a Division I baseball team, and so anyway, I thought last week was great, and coming off the UTA series and Abilene Christian this weekend was very impressive. Even to being a 5-2 ball game with Tennessee, and then come out.
Battling. They kept battling.
And really, you got beat on 4 solo home runs, right? Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, I thought last night was just as impressive, or good, maybe not impressive, but as good for that ball club as the weekend was.
Yeah. So to piggyback off that, when you're evaluating prospects, you're scouting prospects, you have 2 different ways that you do it. You have a ceiling and you have a floor, right? Like the ceiling players are the ones with the big tools, but then they might have big gaps in their games to where their highs are really high and their lows are really low. And so the players that are like the ones that are the ones that are seen as the can't miss guys are the guys that have the high ceilings. They have the very high highs, but then they don't have the low lows because they also have a very high floor. And so kind of what you're speaking to is we've seen that this team, Harrison Bodendorf can go out there and pitch, Gabe Davis, Ryan Ures look good, Youngerman's been fantastic. Yeah. We know Nolan Schubert's one of the best offensive players in the country. This is a middle of the lineup that can do damage, that kind of. We know this team has a high ceiling. What we wanted to see was, can this team raise the floor? Something I think, if you want to be critical of maybe Josh Alday in the past, is the floor on those Tuesday games hasn't been high enough. And I think that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah, and talking baseball, right, is that, it's great to see you go out and obliterate a midweek game and beat somebody 14-2 and get some guys some playing time that normally don't. But, I mean, at the end of the day, how much does that really gain for your program other than getting other guys playing time? a win's a win, right? And it wasn't a win because it wasn't 3-2 because it was sloppy play or ugly play, right? It was a 3-2 ball game because we're hitting line drives right at people or whatever the case is, and we weren't making a bunch of errors or that sort of thing. You have to, in this sport, you have to learn how to win a 3-2 ball game.
You do.
Whether you're playing Tennessee or you're playing Winthrop, right?
And you have to learn to win to win in different weather conditions too,
and in different ways, Yes. And I think early on in the season, we talked about this last week. Early on in the season, I think you're seeing a lot more bunting guys over or drag bunting for a hit or whatever the case is than probably you have in the last 13 years of Coach Holiday being at OSU. And I love seeing that, right? I love seeing all aspects of baseball. And the testament to this staff and what you're talking about is sometimes that's the stuff that raises your floor. Right?
Yes,
is that you're that you're able to win a 3-2 ball game because you have the ability to bump people over, and that it's obvious that you've worked on it, and that's a part of your philosophy. That's a part of your game plan.
And you recruited kids that can do it. You haven't recruited just all 6'8" dudes, right?
Right. And so speaking to what you're saying is, I think being well-rounded as a team and being able to incorporate the small ball aspect and count on the long ball aspect as well allows you to raise that floor and allows you to not be in a situation where, last night tells you that Texas State was the exception, not the rule.
Correct.
Right. That's going to happen in baseball. It's disappointing. It's ugly. You know what I mean? But a week later, you're in the situation that you were last night, and it was corrected, right? And so I think OSU and this ball club, and hearing the things that Coach Holiday has talked about this ball club and being an elite offensive group, and really looking at, does this team have the competitive endurance and how do we build that? I think that all, and like you're saying, raising the floor, I think that is all made possible by what you're seeing from this team that may be a little bit different this year than what you've seen in OSU in the past. And that is being more aggressive early in the count, using the small ball aspect. Even Drew Culbertson coming up to plate, it's starting to get to the point where if he swings the bat as opposed to try and bunt for a hit, you know what I mean? And it's working, you know what I mean? And it's really utilizing the kids, and we talked a lot about this last year, really utilizing the strengths and the skills of that kid and placing them in a point in the lineup where they can utilize their strengths, right? And I think Coach Holiday does a great job of that. And just seeing how well-rounded this team is as an offensive group goes to what you're talking about, and being able to raise that floor and the lows not being as low.
Yeah. One thing that drives me nuts about baseball talk is whenever you talk small ball, people just assume that you mean that every time somebody gets on first, you always want to bunt, or you're always wanting to play small ball. Yeah. That's not what we mean when we talk about, and you said it perfectly, incorporating small ball. Yeah. So, hey, score the first run of the game, which sometimes is a lot of times is the hardest run to score. Get the lid off scoring wise by playing some small ball and putting some pressure on the defense. Score the last run, that one run that you need, or the tying run like Oklahoma State did yesterday. When you just need one run to tie the game, hit a 13-mile-an-hour dribbler to the pitcher and score a guy from third after you had two singles and a sack bunt. Right. So it's not that we want Oklahoma State to be a small ball, just 100% of the time team. It's just that to be able to be an elite team, to have both the high floor and the high ceiling, you got to be able to incorporate it to score the one run every now and then that you have to have.
Yeah, it's situational small ball.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that if you have runners on first and second, no outs, and Nolan Schubert comes to plate, we're not asking, we don't want small ball.
No.
Right? We want to see a 3-run homer. You know what I mean? And we'll take that chance, right?
Absolutely.
Or let's say that it's first and second with nobody out, and the guy that comes to plate is 3 for 3 on the day. He's swinging a hot bat. Let him swing it. Let's take our chances, right? But
if it's Drew Culbertson, bunt the guy over, and and don't try to just give up the out. Yeah. Try to get on first base too.
But like you said, if you have Drew Culbertson, or if you have a Braden Smith, or you have somebody like that right now isn't swinging a hot bat, even though I think Braden's getting closer, and then use that situation, right? And I think you're seeing from this team this year that situation coming up more often because it's being incorporated more, or it's more of a mindset. It's not just traditional OSU baseball where, we're looking for the long ball every time. You know what I mean? And so I like the aggressive approach. I like the risk versus reward on those situations. I also like, me as a baseball guy, I don't care if 4 holes up and you got first and third with less than 2 outs. I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
That's playing baseball.
Playing baseball. And so anyway, that it's fun to watch, right? Because you're not as not just a fan, but as a spectator, you're not so predictable. Right. And it's fun to see all aspects of baseball being played at the Division I level, because for the last however many decades it's disappeared. Right. Yeah. So it's nice to see it come back.
Yeah. And it's coming back at the major league level too. They made the bases bigger, which brought the stolen base back in. And there are more dynamic players now, not just guys hitting home run after home run after home run. So, hey, let's get into a little bit of a tough conversation. The biggest complaint, of course, Rob Walton, if you talk to Mike Rooney and all the national people around the United States, they will put him in the elite echelon of pitching coaches.
Sure.
But yet you hear Oklahoma State fans, and all they do is bitch about the guy, right? That he doesn't know when to pull out a guy, blah, blah, blah. So let's have a tough conversation about Rob Walton. Okay? I'll say this, too. The Dodgers have won the NL West 7 or 8 years in a row, and they complain to no end that Dave Roberts doesn't know when to take a pitcher out.
Sure.
It's the most unscientific thing in all of sports. So where are you at there with Coach Walton? I personally, nothing's perfect. Like, nobody makes 100% perfect decisions, but I don't know why he takes on so much criticism from OSU fans. The dude has been a wizard, I think.
The answer to that is because people don't know what they have until they don't have it anymore.
I would agree.
And
yes.
If you want to know how good Rob Walton is, get rid of Rob Walton and see how good your pitcher staff
or Josh Holiday.
You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah.
Is that this is people are trying. What I love about society and human nature is that they want to apply the same metrics from 25 years ago that can't be used in the current system, right? In that if you're trying to hold a head coach or a pitching coach or whatever to the same standards of being able to know when to pull that kid because you've had them for 3 years from a freshman, sophomore, now they're a junior, versus you've had them since August. Right?
Yeah,
and
right.
The only way that you're going to know with this kid that comes in as a junior that's pitched the last 2 years at Division I and he's transferred into your program and you've had him since August and working out with, the only way that you're going to know when to pull that guy, the only experience, the only metric that you have is to let him throw.
Great point.
Let him throw. Right?
There you go.
Now, if where people can complain and be justified is if we find out after 11 to 15 games that this guy's got 5 innings in him, or he's got 85 pitches, whatever it is, maybe not innings, it's more pitches. He's got 85 pitches in him. And then come postseason, you haven't learned anything from what you've experienced on his first 5 starts.
Pedro Martinez.
Then complain, right? You know what I mean? But early in the season, the only way you can evaluate these kids in game situations is to let them play in game situations. Right. Let's push 100%. The limits. Let's see where this kid can go, because what we don't want to do is get to the last 2 weekend series that may put us in first place in the Big 12 versus drop us down to third. And we still don't know what the limit of this kid is. Right. So let's push the limit. Let's see if he can go 90 pitches. Nope, he can't. His limit's 80 pitches. Okay. Now we know. Right. And so I think some of the, the social media aspect and keyboard warriors and everybody's an expert, and baseball's the worst sport because everybody played T-ball, which makes them which makes them an expert knowing how to coach baseball. You know what I mean? It's stupid. Anyway, from that first weekend where we saw the pitching struggle a little bit, and I even made the comment that after the first weekend, which this metric has totally changed, obviously, but after the first 3 games, if you would have went to the stats and saw where OSU is ranking in the walk to strikeout ratio, it was horrible. It was horrible, right?
And now they're not walking anybody.
And now now we're back up in the top 30. It was like 131 after the first 3 games. Now after 11 games, we're in the top 30, 25 or 30. Yeah. And that's the progress that you want to see with your staff, right? And all these different components. Well, he don't know when to pull a guy or what. Well, how do you know when to pull a guy until you've let him go to his limit
course.
You know what I mean? And see how far this kid can go, right?
Yeah.
And you're also as a coach fighting the thing that where you think you want to pull this kid, but this kid comes to you and says, I'm going back out there. I want one more inning, right? Well,
or sometimes you just want to see what they're made out of. Let's see what they got.
The last thing that you want to, it's always easier to back off a kid, right?
It is. It absolutely is.
But it's hard to limit a kid and then halfway or three-quarters way of the season say, hey, we need you to go 20 more pitches. Perfect. You know what I mean? But
easier to slow them down than it is to speed them up.
And if you got a kid early in the season that's got the competitive fire and says, no, I want one more inning. I've got 15 more pitches in me. Don't pull me out. I want this. It's hard to look at a kid that's 19, 20, 21, 22, whatever the case is, and say, no, we've got some metric that says that you need to be pulled. Let's find out. And so all that other stuff is nonsense if people want to talk about, because I'll go back to what I initially said. If you want to know what you have, okay, get rid of him and see if you're going to be able to replace him or not.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying anybody's suggesting get rid of Rob Walton. I'm not saying that.
No.
But people forget how good you have.
Oh, there's people out there, trust me. I hear it all the time.
But people forget how good you have it or what you have until you don't have it anymore. 100%. Right. And if you want to know how good Rob Walton is, listen to his peers talk about him. Right.
Oh, my
Listen
goodness.
to people that have been around the sport and around the pitching aspect of the
sport.
Former
players, former
pitchers, former coaches, current coaches, people at all levels. Listen to what they have to say about him. Right. And
they know more about it than we do.
That's all you need to know. Right. And just because you were the pitcher for your son's coach pitch team, right, doesn't make you an expert.
Coming in hot today. I love it. Love it. How about Harrison Bodendorf? Pitcher of the week, Coach.
Dirty
Harry. Yeah, man. But I'll tell you what, he was masterful, man. It was like watching a left-handed Greg Maddux, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nice. It was very. It was. That's I was thinking about that when that came across the screen. I don't remember why I saw it. What he said. That's what I love about college athletics too, is the nicknames that they come up with people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it was watching him and watching Stormy Rhodes and Mario Pesca and Youngerman and Drew Blake.
Boy, how good was Drew? Woo.
Drew Blake being a completely, we talked a lot about him last year about, he's always had the stuff and just waiting for him to take that next step. And I think you're seeing that right now of him being very reliable and a guy that's taken that next step and looks more confident on the mound. Where the pitching staff landed after yesterday versus where it was after that first weekend, I think is not just a testament to your previous question about Rob Walton, but a testament to the quality of pitchers that we have on staff.
Yeah. So Noah Weck, this is a young man with big stuff. I mean, he's 96 already. The ball's turning right, it's turning left. He's got all the mentality to it. Has had the worst luck of any young pitcher, and he's young.
Yeah.
So is that something that just with all the bad luck? Now, he did walk a guy. He did give up the home run, so I'm not absolving him of all of it. But it's baseball. It happens. I mean, like we said, these are the best teams in the United States of America. It is what it is. So and he's from Manitowoc, Wisconsin, so he's never – he's been in all the tournament circuits in this, but this could be a situation that could really rattle a young pitcher. I don't see it in him with his mentality. Is there any worry there for you?
No. Yeah, and I've thought about this is that, how much does he remind you of Brian Holiday a little bit?
Yes.
With just his physique and his makeup and his approach to now. How much does Stormy Rhodes remind you of Tommy Molsky?
Yes.
And not necessarily from a delivery standpoint, but just again the physique and the approach to the mound and approach to. That's what I see in those guys, right? And that, like you said, early on in a career, being a freshman and that sort of thing, and coming in and being in tough situations and having all the bad luck. He didn't get the called third strike against Texas. He didn't get the check swing call that would have ended that inning. That kind of unraveled, and he comes right back out the next time and throws strikes, right? And so I think that is just as good for him. And again, going back to what you said, the question about Coach Walton, right? And being able to throw that kid right back out there. It's the old adage of, if you've ever was raised on a farm and you got bucked off a horse, right? Mm-hmm. The worst thing that your dad or grandpa could do is grab you and take you inside, right?
Yeah.
Because if you know anything about it, get right back on there, right? Yeah. If that horse throws you for whatever reason, get right back on him, right? And I think that's the approach that Coach Walton has taken with Noah Weck is that he's got the stuff, he's got the makeup, he's got the mentality, he's got the competitive fire, and just because something went bad, throw him right back out there, right, and let him deal with it, let him figure it out. And I think that's what you're seeing with him early on in the season, and that's going to pay dividends, huge dividends down the road.
Tell you another thing, Ethan Lund. I know that they saw him in fall ball. I know they know he had the big stuff. I'm just telling you, you and I have both been there as a manager, coach, whatever you want to call it, going, I know this dude's good, and I know he's going to be good. So, from a big picture, I'm not too worried about it. But you know what? I'm not exactly sure what's getting ready to happen in the next 8 or 9 minutes. After he gave up a base hit on the first pitch that he threw, and then he walked the next guy, it's almost like, as a manager, like, I'm really interested to see how this dude handles this.
Yeah.
That's how I was, and I know that's how Josh and Rob were. I'm sure they had confidence in him, but there was that aspect to it. So where were you at on that? And I'll say this, I was super proud of the way Ethan came through that.
Well, that's the next point I was going to get to is early on, and I don't have any stats to back this up, just processing.
Yes.
We haven't seen the unraveling of a pitcher like we have in the past. Here and there may be spotty appearances or guys doesn't have their best stuff, but they haven't come unraveled, right? There hasn't been the necessity. Now, Coach Walton has gone out and pulled a guy in the middle of an inning because of matchup situations, right?
Or pitch count,
or pitch count or something like that. Yeah. But I don't remember early on right now the first 11 games where we've had to go pull somebody because they've come unraveled. Right, whether it was Noah Weck or Ethan Lund or any of the other pitchers, they may not have had their best stuff, or they may have gotten a tight jam, or they may have given up some runs. But we haven't seen the unraveling of a pitcher like you normally see in the first part of a season. And so I think that speaks testament to, again, not just Coach Walton, but the quality of the arms that we have and the confidence that this staff has in the kids, and not just that, but the confidence that the kids have in their stuff, right, and their ability to go compete. And it's good to see that not just from your veteran guys, but Ethan Lund and Noah Weck and Stormy Rhodes, guys that are freshmen, kids that are 19 years old, right? And so I don't have any concerns about that, and it's great to see those kids not only being given the chance to work through a difficult situation and figure it out. You talk about white line fever a lot in baseball, and that there's a reason why people don't recruit out of the bullpen. Yeah. There's a reason why people don't recruit out of the batting cage, right?
Yeah, 5 o'clock hitters.
Yeah, and the only way you're going to figure it out is for you to go do it.
Yeah.
Right. We can talk about it. We can simulate it in practice. We can do all different kind of things in bullpens and try and talk about the mental approach. We can prepare by watching scouting or reading scouting reports and going over that kind of stuff. But until you go out there and do it, right, it doesn't mean anything. And so it's good to see that not just the coaching staff is allowing these kids to work through difficult situations, but the kids being able to productively work through them, right? And I think that comes from not just the confidence that the staff has in the kids, but you're seeing kids at an early age have a lot of confidence in their stuff to go out there and work through those situations.
Yeah. And Gabe Davis, we know that Gabe Davis is going to have to be a legitimate number one, although Harrison Bodendorf showed whenever he's on, like he was the other night, he could be a number one too. No doubt about it. But I'll tell you this about Gabe. I know that the game that Oklahoma State didn't win, he gave up some home runs. Just from a process perspective, just watching his mannerisms, watching how he dealt with success, watching how he dealt with failure, watching the execution, how the consistency of it. To me, that was I know the results we didn't win, but it was a different Gabe Davis than I saw last year, and it was all encouraging for me. Am I being is there too much Pollyanna to that?
No, I think I'm assuming you're talking about the Tennessee game.
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody that's competitive like me or you or whoever else doesn't believe in moral victories.
No, right.
But if you listen to the people that are announcing the game or calling the game on the TV or the radio, and they talk about how impressive it is to be in a 5-2 ball game against Tennessee, right? And that literally you got beat by 4 solo home runs. Right. I mean, other than those weren't there 4 solo home runs in that game?
I think so.
Whatever.
I have not looked at
it. It wasn't like there was this huge manufacture of runs on the part of Tennessee. Right. And I think Gabe Davis did very well. I think there's a noticeable difference between him this year and last year, and you're seeing that progression with him. Think you're, because I've always thought, and I don't know the kid personally, never talked to him or anything like that, but just the optics of it, has seemed like to me that the only thing holding Gabe Davis back was the confidence that Gabe Davis has in himself.
100%.
Right. And I think you're starting to see that. Now, I think a 5-2 ball game against Tennessee can be a confidence builder, right? If you go out there and you get slacked for 8 runs in the first inning and you only pitch 2/3 of an inning, you get pulled. That could be detrimental to the confidence of that guy, right? But I think what you saw from him and the way he was able to go out and compete against the top team in the nation, the defending national champion, should give him a lot of confidence in his stuff, and again will pay dividends down the road. But yeah, I think you're starting to see that step up in progression and him being more confident in himself and being able to give me the ball on Friday, I'm gonna be your Friday night guy. I think he's starting to believe it.
Yeah. How good is Garrett Scholl? I mean, that dude's just insane, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you hate to put too much on a freshman young like this. Of course, you have Schubert, you got Miola, you got a lot of guys that can take the heat off him, but man, Garrett Scholl's really good.
And I think I said it a lot last podcast is this, because we were talking about Carson Benz, losing Carson Benz and those guys, that it'll be interesting to see after this kid's 3rd year of college baseball if he's not just as good, if not better, and I think he's got the potential. I mean, he's walking up there with confidence and, just hearing the stories about how, he had got drafted, but, he told Coach Holliday, if you play me, then I'll be there for 3 years. I want to get OSU back to College World Series and all that kind of stuff. And he's the kid, man. I mean, he's good. He's fun watching, and he doesn't look like a 19-year-old freshman standing up there, or however old he is, but he doesn't look
body-wise and mentality-wise, neither one of them.
He's good, and we talked about, the freshman group last year with Avery Ortiz and Colin Ritchie and Donovan LaSalle and Sylvester and all those guys, and then you get the kids in this year with Brock Thompson and Garrett Scholl and those and Ethan Lund and Weck and all those kids, Stormy Rhodes. And I mean, it just in today's athletic world, it's hard enough to be able to go out and get quality freshmen, especially in the sport of baseball, where they could go to the draft and sign and go on. And it's hard. It's very difficult to go out and get quality freshmen that you can count on day one. And for OSU to be able to go out and get multiple ones of them, is pretty impressive, if you ask me. In that you've got 2 everyday starters that are true freshmen in the lineup, right? And you've got 3 guys that you are highly counting on a weekend basis or midweek basis on your pitching staff. You've got 5 to 6 kids that are true freshmen in your program that you're leaning on pretty heavily on a daily basis and going out and competing against juniors and seniors, other clubs. And it'd be interesting to see how many other clubs are relying as heavily on freshmen that we are, but it's not just we're relying on freshmen, is that we're relying on quality freshmen.
No doubt.
We're relying on quality arms and quality kids in the lineup that speaks volumes to OSU's program and what Coach Holliday and his staff has been able, not just to recruit the right kids, but convince them to come to OSU.
Well, and to keep Nolan Schubert and Aiden Miola and Colin Ritchie and all these other guys that could have went anywhere they wanted to.
Right.
And Donovan LaSalle, for that matter.
Correct.
And kept him. I mean, Donovan LaSalle, there's no way that you could have guaranteed him an everyday spot, and he hasn't had one, but yet he stays at Oklahoma State. That speaks to the culture. So one last talking point here, Coach, before we get out of here. Your final thoughts, and Ian Doherty's been simply fantastic. I gave him the I Want That Dude on My Team award for this last weekend just because of all the little things that go unnoticed that he did. And without his contribution, OSU doesn't win a game this weekend. I'm just telling you, that's how valuable the job he did was behind the plate. Having said that, Bo Sylvester doesn't look confident at the plate. He's a good player, great young man. He has the ability. We haven't seen Charlie Carter yet. Ian Doherty cannot catch every inning of this season. So you got to have at least some concerns at the catcher spot right now, right?
Maybe from an offensive standpoint of Ian Doherty and I don't know that. Do we have the same concerns? Because that's always kind of been Ian Doherty's weakness, is his arm throwing out runners and that sort of thing. Not defensively with walking balls and that sort of thing. But I think what you're seeing from this is that there's 12 guys that can be in the starting lineup, but you only got 10 spots.
Yeah.
Right. And that we've got guys that we may have 11 guys swinging a hot bat in practice and in the cage and squaring it up, but you only got 10 spots to put people in, right? You only got 9 hitters to go to the plate. And so I think, I don't think there's a concern, necessarily a catcher concern from the defensive aspect of it, but I think what the concern is how do we give this guy rest and not lose offensive productivity, right? And do we give him a full day's rest where he's not catching, he's not hitting, not doing anything, right? To give him a rest and pull out one of our hospitals. Because one of the things we talked about last week was that the only 2 guys on the team last week that had more walks than strikeouts was Nolan Schubert and Ian Doherty, right? Well, now there's nobody on the team that has more walks than strikeouts, but the 2 guys that still have the best strikeout to walk ratio is Nolan Schubert and Ian Doherty, right? So if you look at it from a standpoint of putting the ball in play or on base percentage or whatever, the 2 guys you don't want to take out your lineup are the guys that are, have the best strikeout to walk ratio. And you saw that yesterday. The number back to the pitcher, right, is productive, just as productive as a line drive to center field,
100%.
right? And so are we in a position where we can't give him a rest behind the plate because we can't afford to have his bat out lineup, right? And are we confident with giving him a full day rest with who's going to be back there that we can keep their bat in lineup, right, without having to lose, Garrett Scholl or Donovan LaSalle out of the lineup or whatever the case is? I think it's a good problem to have and a good discussion to have, but at the same time, it's a little bit worrying about, are we overloading this kid early on in the season at that spot? Because everybody knows how difficult it is to play 40 games behind the plate, right?
Yeah. It just takes one left-handed slider to jam the thumb and everything's screwed up.
That's correct. And so that's a long way to answer your question, but the answer to that is it tells you how important Ian Doherty is to the lineup, right? But we've also talked about this coaching staff, and what Coach Holliday does is creating those competitions within the group without creating divide, right?
Right.
And we're looking for that guy that's going to step up. And Charlie Carter, great defensively. You saw that he played a lot last year, but struggled at the plate, right? And which you're always going to have that with your catcher, right? Your catchers typically aren't your highest batting average guys and all that kind of stuff because of the wear and tear on the body. But we need somebody that's going to be able to get behind the plate, allow Ian Doherty to have some rest without losing productivity in the lineup.
Yeah. Especially until you get Avery Ortiz back and you can plug him back at shortstop, because Drew Culberson, as talented as he is, hasn't hit a whole lot since he's been in lineup. So it's hard to have him and like a backup catcher that's not hitting too. And then Braden Smith, he's going to hit. He's not hitting right now. So it makes it a little bit tricky there. But Coach, hey man, this has been a great conversation. It's super exciting to be an Oklahoma State Cowboy baseball fan. So final thoughts, make it rain.
Just, we've talked about how exciting this ball club is and the potential of it. And I think you're seeing steady growth with this group, that it's coming together and the cohesiveness is there, and the coaches are learning more about the players and that competitive endurance. And you're seeing that maybe some of the bad play was the exception, not the rule. And just look forward to continue watching these guys and play and compete. Wish that they would start midweek games at 6 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock, so us people that work till 4 can actually go. People that live outside of Stillwater, I guess. But anyway, I'm very pleased with them, and they're exciting to watch, and look forward to what's going to happen for the rest of the season.
All right, Coach, thanks. For Robbie Rainwater, I'm Casey Porter of OkState Daily. It's a great day to be a Cowboy. Go Pokes.
Go Pokes.